Welcome to the January Donovan Show. Today, I'm excited because I just admire this woman's courage, and I'm just going to pick her brain to study her heart, her mind, her purpose, and hopefully that you can learn and harvest from it. Because the goal is for us is to become leaders of life and to defend our faith, family, and freedom. But how do you do that? So today, Kendall, welcome to the January Donovan Show. I'm so grateful for who you are and what I've watched you from a distance. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Even for the few minutes before the show that we were talking, I'm really excited. You have such a beautiful heart, and I'm really excited to dive into everything.
Well, thank you. So, just to give even a window of who you are, how
Mm.
would you describe Kendall to our audience in 3 words?
Oh my goodness, 3 words. I would say I'm a woman of God. I'm going to say a family woman because I would say a wife and a mom, but those are two. So a woman of God, a family woman, and a patriot.
I love it. I love it. It shows my own
Thank
heart.
you.
Thank you for being that. And so I have watched you just from a distance, mainly because I needed the courage. So I always say Ketanji Jan Brown Jackson, when she could not define what a woman it was a shot heard around the world. To me, it marked a clear existential crisis for women and the radical feminist agenda, women that are godly women, and say, wait a minute, all of a sudden, something I have never thought about before was to define a woman. All of a sudden, it was out in the open. So take me to even just your experience when you heard that, because that was a defining moment. We kind of heard, just this kind of movement about womanhood, but that was a radical shot heard around the world.
That was radical. It was a radical statement. It was shocking. It was really sad because for me, I was raised in a household that I knew I was a female from I just knew I was a female. There was no question about it. And same with my brother. And I don't think that was because we were born straight. I think that's because that's just how God created us. And so there wasn't an option for it because there shouldn't be an option. God doesn't make mistakes. And to to tell someone that God has made a mistake on anything, specifically their gender, that's a lie. And I know that there's this whole movement of people who say, it's not loving to use the wrong pronouns. Well, I don't think it's loving to tell someone that God made a mistake and then to affirm a mental illness. I think what's loving is to come around that individual and get them help and figure out what's going on in your life that makes you believe that you're not in the right skin. I mean, it's essentially it's similar to if you're sinning in any capacity, people need to come alongside you. You don't go to an alcoholic and give them more alcohol. You give them the tools to figure out what is causing you to drink. You don't go to an adulterer and provide more women. You figure out why does he feel the need to cheat on his spouse.
Yeah, I mean, which is so logical. I mean, I can have that conversation,
Yeah,
but it really has come to a point where, I mean, there's no logic anymore. And Jordan Peterson did a podcast a couple months ago, and it was kind of a huge aha. And he said, "Enlightenment is over." It was so, so
mm,
the Enlightenment movement, which just happened, and basically, people are now seeing that there's no more line. It's you can't, because Enlightenment was sort of like, okay, we're now enlightened, we can be like God, but now it's like it's kind of gone way too far that you
right.
can't define what a woman is. And people are actually waking up to saying, wait a minute. Like truth is, we need to reestablish objective truth. We need to stop this idea that, it's kind of backfiring. What I have really kind of gathered from you is your journey of courage. So I share this because to me, I really lack the courage. Being in the women's school, I just thought
Yeah,
I didn't want to be controversial because so much of what we do is teaching women how to think, how to develop
yeah,
skill based on biblical principles, but it's available to anyone who wants to. But when they're couldn't define what a woman, I was like, so what's my role? We're a women's school,
yeah, yeah.
and do we accept men? I mean, it was like all of a sudden. So, what was your journey of courage
That
like?
is that's such a good question. I used to think I didn't have one because I was raised in a Christian household. My mom was served on the Reagan administration. She also was an advocate for pro-life before that was really a thing.
Mm.
And so I was just raised in this space, and I never had this like big testimony where I know other people who have gone through incredible journeys and they have a moment of where they, became who they are today. And I didn't get that until later in life. I was not hearing very well, and I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Actually, I was at a restaurant with my husband, and the waiter came over and he said, "Can we get you anything?" Or no, he said, "Can I get you anything else? Do you need more bread?" And I said, "No, I think we're okay. Can you just bring more bread?" And my husband said, "Babe, you're not hearing well." And he had picked up on clues for a while, but it just was not going well. And so he sent me to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I went there. I was diagnosed with otosclerosis. Otosclerosis is progressive deafness. And I had two surgeries for that. Neither one was successful. And so now I wear hearing aids. But I am so thankful for my hearing loss because in that same appointment, he's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So he felt my throat. It had nothing to do with the hearing loss. Felt my throat, discovered a lump. Sure enough, it was thyroid cancer. The night before my full thyroidectomy, my husband came home with a pregnancy test and he's like, "I need you to go pee on this. Like, you're pregnant." And I'm thinking, "No, I don't think I'm pregnant." He was like, "You've been waking up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom. I feel like you're pregnant." Took the test. I didn't even wait for the results, January. Like, I truly was like, there's no way. Go upstairs, tuck my son into bed, came back down. Sure enough, I'm pregnant.
No
I
way.
got on the phone that night. I think it was 9 o'clock with my anesthesiologist and my doctor, my surgeon. And they said, "Listen, we're going to adjust anesthesia to make sure that you're safe and baby's safe." I woke up from a very successful thyroidectomy, but my cancer had spread. I was stage 3, and I would need to either A, abort baby and really focus on myself and my treatment, or lay it at the feet of God, trust Him, trust that He had a purpose for this baby. His timing is better than mine. And that's what we did. We held off on treatment. I gave birth to Presley at 9 months. I breastfed her for 2 months. If you have breast milk in your body when you're doing radiation, it'll attack the breast milk and not the cancer. So breastfed her for 2 months, rid the milk of my body, did radiation, and now I'm cancer free. So
You
that
are kidding
was
me.
my moment.
I mean, that is quite a story.
It's quite a story. And truly, it's one of those stories that's like it was only God. And so like what a beautiful story when he can take this mess and turn it into a message. And that's exactly what he did.
I mean, that is a really profound testimony. So, when was this? How old is Presley? Presley?
Presley, yep, Presley is now 8. So she's almost 9. This was almost 10 years ago. I had my 10-year scan. I'm cancer free. This specific cancer is known to come back at the 20-year mark, but I know that God will be a huge God in that moment too. And I'm just trusting that and having faith with him there.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a really powerful testimony because it's a real tough choice, especially when you have older children prior to, and
Yeah.
I say it's a tough choice because the medical industry really manipulates you to make. I have 8 children, so I have been, I struck
You
out.
have so many babies. I have to tell you, when my husband and I first got married, he wanted 7. So he will be so jealous you have 8. I only have 3. And we had miscarriages in between each, but I think big families are so wonderful.
Well, I feel extremely blessed in my story, actually, just so because I had an abortion at 16 without because I had no
Okay.
faith, and it was so traumatic.
Yeah.
And it was because I didn't have any skill to say no to this guy, and it's an open story. And then 3 months later, I had my second abortion. I was a walking dead for 10 years. I'm a walking
Oh my
mercy,
gosh.
which is the reason why I do the women's school because I have 8 children, incredibly beautiful marriage for 18 years. I never thought I deserved that. Like it could only be God.
It's only God. And those are the moments that like can glorify him the most.
Could only that's why I do what I do. But back to your story, there's a lot of reason not to trust.
Yeah.
It's so illogical sometimes in these moments. And so, wow, well, thank you for now the why is becoming clear of
Yeah. Well, and let me say before
hey,
we move on, I love that you're open about your abortion because again, that's the only way that God can use it for his glory. And I don't think he wastes anything. So I think even if you've been through a test, you can turn it into a testimony. And if we squander that, we're not giving him the opportunity to be glorified. So I think it's incredible that instead of carrying shame in that, you're using it to educate others.
oh, thank you. It took me a long time, Kendall.
Oh, to forgive yourself and think of those babies when, their birthdays come. I can imagine.
Yeah, and even communicating it to my older children, that really, and being pro-life, knowing that I've walked through the valley of death. I mean, it really becomes, you know,
Yeah.
it- God doesn't waste anything. So yeah, thank you. But part of it too is there's such a shame around
Yeah.
even the pro-life. And I'll just side note, when I was surrounded with a lot of pro-life women, but I felt like it was pro-baby, not pro-woman. And what I mean by that, there's so much of the emphasis was on the baby, which obviously I was pro-life then, but not the wound that brought women to that decision.
Right.
And so, which is why I do what I do. I was a good girl, literally no training, didn't even know what abortion was. Like
Yeah.
I was a baby. I was 16. And,
Gosh,
and
you are, baby.
it really, I mean, you think about now that the surgeries are for the trans movement is 9 years old, 10 years old. I mean, just, that's a whole level of conversation. But take me to even, okay, so you say you're a patriot, because
Yeah.
I want to elaborate on that. Take me to your journey of having the courage to kind of see the state of our culture, what's
Yeah.
happening, and really willing to risk yourself. And I'll just say this because I think 2 years ago, there was even this idea of being a patriot was understood, but it was not advertised. There was a stigma around it.
Hmm.
The Hollywood was untouchable. The feminist movement was untouchable. There was no conservative women and in any magazine, but it was just the way it was. We good
Yeah.
women accepted that as a norm. So take me to that journey of saying, wait, something's got to shift. What was that like for you interiorly?
Yeah. I mean, again, I was raised in a conservative home. It wasn't until COVID. And I will tell you that is the one positive thing that came from it. I think for a lot of people is we discovered our voices. And I had always been very outspoken. I remained a virgin until my wedding night with my husband. And so from a very early age, I learned to speak out for myself and to have to be comfortable in that space. But when COVID hit and they were telling our children that either A, they couldn't go to school,
Mhm.
B, they needed to get a shot if they did, or C, they needed to wear a mask, or all of the above. That's when I decided to get a group of people. I put a Facebook post out there and I'm like, hey, who wants to join me in our capital at Kentucky? And I called the news stations. I'm like, we're going to go to and protest and talk about how this isn't okay. We are not masking our children. We're not doing this. We don't know enough about COVID to make these decisions so sporadically on this. And it just felt wrong. I didn't want my children to be lab rats in this whole situation. And so we went to the Capitol and we started protesting. So that kind of sprung me into the social media. And then I was also doing this woman, her name is Principal Schmidt. Now, a lot of my followers love Principal Schmidt. She's a character that I've kind of come about. And she kind of reminds me of like a Sarah Palin. She starts with, hi, parents, Principal Schmidt. And she talks about all of the like crazy things that were going on. So during Valentine's Day of COVID-19, my kids were sent home with a letter saying that we were in fact going to do Valentine's Day boxes this year, but none of the supplies could come from home because the supplies from home could have COVID on it. But the supplies that the teachers brought into the school somehow didn't have COVID on it. And so it was all going to be provided through the school and they would do all the measures there. And it was just the weirdest thing because then we could also bring in treats for the Valentine's Day celebration. So those were coming from home. And Principal Schmidt would just talk about these things that were going on at school. And I got a lot of traction there. And I started to get a big following. And I remember getting 5,000 followers. And that was huge for me. I mean, I went from 500 to 5,000 very quickly. And I prayed that night and I said, Lord, if this is something that you want me to do, I want you to provide the space. I want you to give me the platform. And I'm telling you, my page took off and it hasn't stopped until recently when I hit a shadow ban and now no one can see my stuff, no one can comment, no one can like. Supposedly I'm a threat to the community. I'm a danger. But that's where I really found my voice.
Well, I think that you were a voice to many, including
Thank
myself.
you.
No, seriously, because I think we kind of felt I mean, I gathered women for the mask. I couldn't, my 4-year-old. I was like, but I mean, the the shame that came from your family,
Oh,
from, you know, but I guess my question to you, kind of, seeing now kind of full circle in some
mhm.
ways, I don't know if you feel vindicated or validated, but so many things are coming out that are like, what was that nonsense, right? And
Oh, totally.
it's not even political. I always say to my audience, I'm like, this isn't political, this is spiritual. Like, it just so happened to be political. Now we're kind of, looking at Democrat, Republican, but
Hmm.
really it's truth. That's kind of what we were searching for. And what do you think is the cause of women kind of like just saying yes to this? Like, why would people just comply to that? And it was sort of like, this is what we did. What do you think from your vantage point? How did women get to that point? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll just hand over my life to
Oh,
you.
I mean, it's terrifying. We were so, and I don't want to include myself, and I don't even know if I want to include you because I was not compliant in those situations. But we have to think back. They were putting arrows on the ground at the grocery store, and people were following the arrows. Like you could only walk north to get milk, and you could only walk south to get, vegetables. It was ludicrous, and people just followed it. And oh, you have to wear a mask. When before, if you saw someone wearing a mask, that was terrifying. Let's be honest, it was terrifying because they were covering their faces. You would never go into a store when people are covering their faces. That's an indicator that someone's going to rob the place. And here we are encouraging it. And I truly think it's a lack of faith. I think it's a lack of faith, and I think it goes to show how how much people trust doctors and how much trust people have put into our government. And it's scary to think that people think, again, maybe not you and me included, but a lot of people think that the government knows what's best for you and you don't know what's best for your own family. And that's the place where we've gotten, and I think the government is aware of that. I think a lot more people are
Mhm.
waking up. Amber Rose was recently caught walking somewhere and liberal media came up to her, I think it was TMZ, and they're like, "Aren't you glad that Trump isn't running?" or something like that. And she just said, "No, I'm supporting him." And they were like, "What are you talking about? Why are you supporting him?" And she just said, I'm finally awake to it. I'm no longer, following liberal media. I think a lot of people are waking up. And the same thing with, honestly, with the whole Trump situation. I think the liberal media really thought, hey, let's get this guy convicted on all of these guilty counts and it'll work against him. And I'm telling you, people have woken up. And there are people who have said, listen, I didn't like him and I still don't love him. But if you can do that to a former president of the United States, what means you can't do it to me?
Which is really the goal. And honestly, for me, I was so always cautious about, especially vaccine, period.
Yeah.
But I think the last 3 years to me, honestly, I was talking to my pastor and I thought, I think it's grief. Like I carried that burden of grief when I thought what the government was. So I'm an immigrant, moved here at 11
Yeah.
years old, did not see my parents for 5 years straight. Was so grateful because I was the only
Hey, so tell me that story briefly. I mean, you moved here without mom and dad.
without mom and dad because that's the only logical, I mean, that's the only legitimate way you can get your visa. Like,
And who were you living with?
I was with my aunt and my uncle, but Kendall,
Okay.
that's what everyone does for the
Yeah.
American dream. Like,
Hmm.
I didn't have not my parents were not in my events. Like and I cried many tears, but never out of resentment for my parents. Like, it
Yeah.
was the hope of America. So my mom, I mean, can you imagine leaving my sister at that point was 2 years old. I was 7, my brother was 5. 5 years. I mean, that's what
No.
do. I know I have 8. I'm like, I can't even stomach the thought of it, but that is a sacrifice of what you do for a country who's given you freedom. And that's why I'm like, you don't just let everybody in. Like,
Right.
you pay the price. And so when we got here, I was like, America, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I feel so patriotic. Like, Trump to me represents the American dream. Like, to me, to have 8 children, build quite a significant business in 40
Yeah.
countries as a mom of 8, only in America. Like, there's no way I could have done that. So to me, you come to America, you speak the language, you breathe the American flag, the reverence you have for this country. Like, I feel very indebted. So that's why I feel like, even though it's not my platform to say, okay, it is my platform to say, you have to be a woman of gratitude, of courage. Like think through that. Like don't take for granted what you have. So I'm
You will, and I
actually,
say you are giving me chill bumps when you say this because I think so many people are saying right now, well, America was built on the back of these migrants. And I'm thinking the migrants that it was built upon are migrants who are coming here and they are not chanting death to America. They are not trying to destroy this country. Like you said, they are so grateful that they're here and they're wanting to come here for the American dream, not destroy it.
I can cry about it because okay, to me, I'm like, imagine leaving your child, Kendall.
Um,
Your
I mean,
2 year
again, I left my children, my son Jack, and I left Presley when she was 2 months old. I'm sorry, 3 months old with my husband, so I could go do radiation. And I was gone for, 3 days. That was heartbreaking for me. What your parents did was so sacrificial, and it was such a demonstration of unconditional love that they had for you and for this country. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And my parents had a pretty comfortable business there. Like I had nanny, because that's what you do in other countries. They had to be
Yeah,
nanny to come here. Like like the humility. So I feel like this entitlement that's happening in America is a disease. It's
absolutely.
such a, which is why I do what I do. I said women need training. Like stop
Hmm.
this baloney of like, let's just hand over everything to you. It's ruining the American dream. Like that's,
Yeah.
you know, um, so what brought you then from that place of like, okay, I see this. Now, what do I do about it as a voice of leadership? Because I think that is what I see you as, like how do you see a vision for your role to awaken women up to really their role as women, to be a
Yeah.
voice in our society? Like, take me to your that heart.
So God definitely didn't give me a spirit of timidity. He gave me a very big voice, and I feel like in order to glorify him and that gift that he gave me, I want to use that voice to talk to others. Now, with that being said, he did not give everybody that voice. So for the people who sit by and they're like, well, I don't feel like I can say those things. You don't have to say those things. And you don't even have to share, reels about it. That's fine. But I think everybody has a different role in this whole awakening, even if it's as simple as I don't mean to say defying because that seems like such a negative word nowadays, but if you didn't go along with the lockdowns or if you didn't wear a mask, like bravo on you. And I feel like my mission now is I don't want my children to look back at this point in history and say, my mom sat by. I want them to say, my mom used her voice to change my history and my future.
Wow. Wow. Which is, I think we're all hands on deck. That's what I feel like right now, because I think we are. I don't know what would happen if we lose our freedom. Like I in my mind, that's why I feel sort of even using this platform, Kendall, to say if we don't wake up and we've been way too comfortable. That's why I tell women, I
We've been
say,
way too comfortable. And I will say, again, to just talk about my shadow ban, for the last several months, my account has not been able to grow at all on social media. People can't like my things, people can't comment. If they tag me in something, their account is then flagged for false information. I've been called a threat to the community. I've gotten death threats on myself and my family. I've had people call my home. However, in that same breath, it's so important for us to keep going because for a long time I was questioning it. I'm thinking, is this really what God wants me to do? Like I prayed through this whole thing and God opened doors, but now my account isn't moving. And I had another moment when I prayed, God, is this what you want me to do? You need to make it obvious. And I will tell you this, my numbers have not budged in a month. But in this entire month, I will say either between 1 and 3 times a week, I will have a stranger come up to me
"Mm,
and hug me or shake my hand or just thank me and say, I follow you on social media. What you're doing means so much. And you're the voice that I can't be. To me, that's God using everyday people to encourage me and inspire me because I'm telling you, this is not for the faint of heart. And it is a difficult job and it is grueling. And it seems like, a thankless job at times, but I know God's going to use me.
no, I follow you because I think you are a voice of courage. Honestly, like I can't do what you're doing, and you do it so fun. Like I laugh because
Well, we have to. And so many people, I remember at the beginning, people are like, why are you laughing at this? This is so inappropriate. And I'm thinking, listen, if we don't laugh about this, we will all fall into a deep state of depression. Like, can we go back to the point? Like, put yourself, January, mentally in that place when we were in the first few weeks of lockdown, when the first 2 weeks, it was kind of like, this is fun. Like, I remember my family was together and we were doing games and we really learned how to enjoy the smaller, the simpler things in life. Several weeks in, it was like, okay, this is getting old. And if we continue to comply, we won't have a round two and a round three of COVID. We will be stuck in this place and we will be controlled.
that's what happened. So hope. Let's talk about hope, and I'll talk about fashion because
Yeah,
I just did a training on fashion, and I think fashion is a $1 trillion industry hijacked by a radical agenda. Where
agreed.
are the fashionistas of good women? Is that if evil is no longer hiding, then neither should good women. And so good women need to lead the charge in fashion in
Yeah.
every industry. So, anyways, I want to talk about that. So
Okay.
let's talk about hope. How do you feel about the state of our country, and what hope can you cast? Or even because I do see that there is a grand awakening that's happening. I think it is the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, in my opinion. I think it is beyond, Trump. It is beyond, which, by the way, just to get the record straight, I'm deeply indebted to Trump because I think he is a voice of freedom for me as a woman, as a
Yeah.
mother. And people, he's very polarized and he's imperfect, but so is Abraham. So is
Yeah.
David. And so
Yeah.
so am I. So I think he represents to me an opportunity to not be silenced as a woman. So just so be, you can think your way through whatever political views you have, but that's my stand on what's at stake. So take me to just what you're seeing, the awakening. I think that's happening. I think just to qualify what I'm saying, I think there's the ratings of Hollywood has never been lower. It's like
Mhm.
all of a sudden, who cares? Like what, like
Mhm.
they've never been more insignificant. And I think the numbers show
Yeah.
with whatever globe what they have. Number two,
Yeah.
the trust in the medical industry, that's massive. Dr. McCullough just came out that vaccines as a general, I think in the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years, we need to reevaluate it. I don't know if you follow Dr. McCullough, but I'm a huge fan. Came
Yep.
out
Yep. I
just
do.
really, and also now basically the exposure of, the medical industry, all the fraud, the DOJ, all these different things, and now the Judicial Committee, like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what we once thought was no longer. So in some ways, I feel like there isn't hope in that. Take me to what you think this exposition that's happening and how this is really impacting the world. Because I think America's like,
Um, a couple things. I think the veil has been lifted. I think people are no longer asleep to it. And I think whether you're a conservative or a liberal, you realize there's kind of a glitch in the matrix here. Like something is happening. And while there is a lot of fear there, and that's what they want us in a fear-based place. You asked me about this word hope, and I am so hopeful because honestly, January, and I know you agree with this sentiment, this is our temporary home. And so I'm really excited because I think so many things are being fulfilled that are discussed in the Bible that it gives me hope that Jesus is going to come back soon and he's going to take us to heaven. And that is our eternal home. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is the people waking up to that. And it talks about it in the Bible. And I remember before I had children, actually, I think I was pregnant with my first. And I remember the Bible in Revelation talking about that in end times, it'll be very difficult to raise children. And I pictured myself with my son in end times, like literally running through burning buildings, running through what looked like, a video game. And I'm trying to escape all of this. And it was like Hunger Games-esque. I think it's not that extreme, but I think that's exactly what the Bible is talking about. We are trying to shield our children from all of this indoctrination right now. It's terrifying raising a child today because there is so much that they're being fed, so many lies that they're being told, and you're constantly having to counteract that.
yeah, and from my perspective, even the hope, because it's so dark, when evil abounds, grace abounds more. And I really feel like it wakes people up, like
Yeah,
sometimes my oldest is 16. I don't know how old your oldest is, 16, was 17. And I can
yeah,
actually show him, like, this is what's happening. It's so illogical.
yeah,
That he can kind of Yeah, and actually, it's a logical mom. You know,
Yeah, and you know what? I have to say, I love that he's 16, he's aware of it. My son, my oldest, is about to be 12. And I will say when he was around 10, which a lot of people would think is young, and it would have been young for me to know these things. I mean, I didn't even know what sex was. Like, let's be honest, I didn't know what sex was when I was 10 years old. I definitely wasn't interested in it. I was interested in playing babies and Barbies. But nowadays, sheltering your child is not an option. So when my son was around 10, I started talking to him about sex.
Mhm.
Anytime he came to me with a question, I would answer every single question he asked, but it was in an age appropriate way because whatever they hear first is their true north. And I knew that Jack would hear it somewhere, but I'd rather have him hear it from me in the correct context than from someone else because I'm his true north. So we talk about the stories that are in the media. We talk about the LGBTQIA community. We talk about vaccines. And it's funny that you had mentioned vaccines earlier because I used to be that mom. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and Boulder is a very liberal area. And you would be called like a crunchy hippie mom back then if you didn't get your kids vaccinated. And it was so weird. And now how the pendulum has swung because there are so many people being like, well, I don't know. Do we really need a COVID vaccine? Do we really need the flu vaccine? Or did God create our bodies in a way that we can be healthily immune to those things and our bodies naturally fight off these things?
Yeah, I think that exposed it because it was a very divisive topic. You couldn't talk about vaccine. I had a vaccine
Right.
injury initially, my first, my second, and I didn't want to talk about it, and so
Mm-hmm.
thank God, God's mercy, she's totally fine, except for some little bit of dyslexia in the very beginning, which praise the
Yeah.
Lord, that was it. But now you can talk about it openly, and now you can pull out
Not on
data.
social media though. You can't use that word on social media unless you want to get
I mean, it's hard for me to swallow. I'm like, is somebody suing? Is there a class action lawsuit? I mean, you'd be probably, I mean, I don't know, I mean, you'd be,
I mean, I'd love to. And at the same breath, I'm like, who's going to go after big tech? That's a nightmare. Not only would that take so many pieces of evidence and such an incredible lawyer, but the amount of financial
yeah,
stability you have to have in order to dedicate your life to that is overwhelming.
yeah. And which is why you really need an institution and a president who understands,
Yes.
like, okay, because it's our only hope. I mean, they can
Yeah.
do that at the highest level. I mean, that to me is a worthy fight. And I guess talk to the women of faith. What I mean by that is, I think that, I often tell the women of faith, I said, if you're comfortable in your own little cocoon, I'm so glad you said that. Like, you can't actually shield your children anymore, like the way we
Right.
probably would 10 years ago. Like, you actually have to be in the fight because the fight is our doorstep. So what would you say to a woman who's in the faith and just say, January, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into politics. I just don't want to ruffle some feathers. I just want to make sure I live my perfect little happy life. What would you say to that woman in a time of such outright spiritual warfare?
The two things I would say that's not an option anymore. You
Mm.
can't just sit back and live your little life because whatever happens on the political stage is going to affect your life. I mean, think about back in the day, people could a Democrat could marry a Republican and it was a beautiful union. That is no longer the case. It divides marriages, it divides friendships, it divides families. I have family members who no longer speak to me because of it. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is if you don't feel like you have a voice to speak out against it, okay, fine. A, you need to vote and
Mm.
use your voice that way. But B, find yourself a Bible-based church. And what I mean about that is a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to talk about politics. I'm going to tell you right now, abortion is not a left or a right thing. That is a biblical topic. And in the Bible, we are to protect the least of these. We are to protect life inside the womb. And that is an undeniable truth. So find yourself a church that speaks on things like that and speaks on truth, not feelings, and also speaks on the truth that men can't be women and women cannot be men because God created us exclusively and uniquely different, but both in his image.
That's a very practical advice, is because the circle of friends that you surround yourself is going to fuel your courage. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
when you're surrounded with, and I just think, the enemy of greatness is comfort. And I just think
Mhm.
right now there isn't, like you said, that we don't have a choice. I think that's what I want to bring out, is that this is not political.
Mhm.
This is, and I even dare say the fact that we haven't been in the political arena is why we actually got into the spiritual warfare to begin with, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It's just so, okay, so let's talk about fashion. And here's my call. Like, to me,
Okay.
fashion is so usurped. And it's so usurped by agendas that actually do not value men, do not honor men, their
Mhm.
purity, their heart, do not value women, but they have such a monopoly on women. So talk to me about your journey, about the importance of fashion with a
Mhm.
force of purpose, the redemption of the beauty of women with beautiful fashion. Like, what was that
Yeah.
journey for you? And then let's talk about your fashion line.
So let's remember Calvin Klein ads 15 years ago versus now. And Calvin Klein had these beautiful black and white ads. And I think, oh, who was it? Marky Mark was on one of them, and he had his shirt off and he was looking good. Like he was looking like a snack. And he was next to, I don't know who the model was, a very beautiful model. And this was like showing underwear, and it was beautiful. It was a man and a woman. And then fast forward, and there's these morbidly obese individuals who are showing clothing. Now, my problem with that is we have such a health pandemic. I'm not talking about ugly versus beauty, I'm talking about health. And we are almost glorifying an unhealthy way of life. And the left is really good about marketing, and they use their marketing like, well, it's not unhealthy. This is body positivity. How can anybody deny that Black lives matter? How can anybody deny a woman's choice? It's like they've done such a good job using words and twisting words to make you believe that those things are all right. So I think, yes, I think everywhere from Calvin Klein to H&M to Target, I gave up Target. I had been Target sober and Starbucks sober for 4 years now, and I'm so thankful for it. I'm Starbucks sober because I found out that they donate to Planned Parenthood, and I'm Target sober because I cannot stand what they are doing, teaching children that, God made a mistake and there's all these different genders. So my best friend, Lindsey Graham, the Patriot Barbie, not the senator. Her and I got together. We started a clothing line, and our logo is an XX, and that represents the XX chromosomes that God so exclusively and intentionally gave to his daughters. And our clothing line glorifies women. We love life inside the womb. We believe that a woman's role is to be in the home taking care of her family. That doesn't mean that a woman can't go out and work. Lindsay and I both work, but it means that first and foremost, it goes to her husband and her family. And we believe in our country, and we believe that women can be fashionable and beautiful and even sexy as Christians.
I love it. It's all the things that I believe in. I think it almost paints a new model of woman,
Yeah,
because I think there's also this idea of just let yourself go, hot mess
yeah,
mama. And to me, I
yeah.
got it. I said, God is a God of order. God, God creates masterpieces. And so I think we have to discipline ourselves. But I think
Yeah,
we need almost that redemption of order. Yes, work, I work, but
yeah, yeah.
make sure you take care of your home first. And I think, I don't know if you're seeing it, but do you think that there's a new movement that's forming of order? Like, they're all based on biblical principles, but almost
Hmm.
in a world where it's like, yeah, I think that kind of is logical,
I agree.
and it's like, yeah, men and women are different actually. And even though they have always been there, as a biblical principle, people were actually kind of looking at it and actually seeing the logic behind it. I mean, it's crazy that we
I
needed.
I love traditional gender roles. I love that my husband is the provider and the protector of our home. I
Mhm.
love that my job is to take care of our babies and to take care of the home. And I think that's what God intended. And I think it works beautifully that way. I also think that children need to be raised in a home with a mother and a father. There are situations that are beyond our control, but really, a mother and a father both present in the home is what God intended.
As a fabric of society, because I do think that is the epidemic in our society, is that the nuclear family is dissolved. I mean,
Yes.
it's really, it needs a whole new redemption. And in my opinion, we have to get to the heart of the home, which is the woman. And that's where I think we're going to redeem the family nucleus, is if a woman understands who she is, her value, and she's disciplined and she knows how to show up in this.
Hmm.
I think that's what we do in the woman's school, is to discipline and train the woman with a how, because there's
Yeah.
no training in how to be a woman, Kendall. Where do you go to learn how to manage your mind, your emotion, how to be the wife, how to be a mother? I mean, think about that. The,
And
the,
really, we should be getting that from our mothers. But when all these mothers are off working, and again, there are circumstances where women can't always be exclusively in the home. But my main thing is that I would encourage every woman to be in the home when her children get home from school, because she needs to be there to provide a healthy snack and talk to the kids about what they're putting in their bodies. She needs to be there to debrief the day with them and not put them in front of TV like Disney, who's indoctrinating their minds. And then the other thing that I think is really important is that families gather around the kitchen table every single night. That's what we do. And there are a few days a week that we're in softball or we're in football, but genuinely, you need to gather around that kitchen table. And even if it's just enjoying a meal, that's fine. But we also like to do our Bible study with our kids at that time, just to show them, regardless of what's going on at the end of the day, we all gather together and we're here for each other and we support one another.
what a great role model. And that 1 out of 3 women in America are not opting for dining table anymore. That's that.
It
I mean,
breaks my heart. I mean, I remember growing up, those were my best times. We always gathered around the table and we got to talk about our days and we got to connect. And now I'm in a place where I absolutely don't have to hang out with my parents because I'm no longer reliant on them, but I want to hang out with them.
it's so beautiful. Yeah. And the redemption of the dinner table, we talk about it. I said, women, God broke bread. We've got to get back into the kitchen, cook a
Yeah.
good meal, not, nourish them mentally, emotionally. I think those are skills, though, that if our parents didn't have it, we're kind of left orphaned if you think about it, and I always
Yeah.
say women are nurturers of humanity, but if women are void of her ability to nurture, then all else suffers with her.
I think there was a breakdown too when COVID happened and do you remember that they didn't let us go to our place of worship, but they let strip clubs stay open and Walmart stay open? I think that created a new generation of people who feel like, well, I don't really need to go to church. I can watch it online. And I completely disagree. I think we are meant to be in community. So I think going to church is necessary, not only to hear a message, but just to see others and worship with others. I remember when we went back to church for the first time, and it was very early for us because we're like, we're not doing this anymore. And I got chill bumps just standing with my church community and throwing my hands up in worship.
Mm.
And I think we kind of went away from that. So not only having, mealtime, but even mealtime with your community and
Yeah,
having people come around each other and do that.
it's really the good old American dream.
It
I mean,
is. It totally is.
it's the good old families going to church, protecting what is true, good, and beautiful, which is
Yeah.
all obviously based on biblical principle, and looking good. So I want to go
Yes.
back to the
And
fashion.
looking good.
Like,
Absolutely. I do think, I didn't touch on that enough, but there was this time of messy hair, don't care. And I think that's a sweet sentiment. We've all been in that place where we have newborn babies and we just are barely holding our emotions together. So we're definitely not holding our physical together. But I think waking up every day and showering or even putting dry shampoo in your hair, doing your hair, throwing on some makeup, how you look on the outside kind of reflects how you look on the inside. So I really think it's important for women to upkeep their physical appearance.
I think it's so important because your children are your first person you evangelize. Like if
Yes, I mean we have a rule in our home. We do not leave the house in pajamas.
yeah, no.
There are plenty of people who do, but like we get dressed every day um, to greet the day. And I feel like even just swapping out your leggings for a little tennis skirt or some jeans or a casual dress, it makes a world of difference. And there is absolutely a time to wear leggings and a sweatshirt, but you know, take care of yourself.
But to do it as a prayer and a way to honor God, that's the thing,
Absolutely.
because we've made fashion a God as opposed to actually using a fashion to be a force for God. Like that,
Yeah.
I think, is a distinction. The motivation behind it and matters. So,
Yeah.
women, I have a lot of women that come and say, where do even good quality fashion that honors the value of women not take away? So tell us sort of where we can find you, how can we honor and support you? Because for me, we need new role models, not
Thank
just
you.
of fashion, but of women who understands the purpose of fashion and to order it towards its highest good. So tell us where to find you and maybe some last
Mm.
words about just the purpose of the woman and how she shows up looking good and her faith, her family, and her freedom. So take it
Okay.
away.
So you can go to prettylittlepatriot.com to shop. And you can also find us at Pretty Little Patriot on Instagram, Pretty Little Patriot we just joined TikTok. I was, I got to tell you real quick, I was really against joining TikTok because I personally don't have a TikTok. It's China and I just could not get behind it. But there's this whole movement of people shopping. I didn't even know this on TikTok. So Lindsay set that up for me. I'm like, I don't want that on my phone. I don't want them having anything on my phone. So you go do that. And we're now on TikTok. But prettylittlepatriot.com. And our goal was to have pieces that you can, so obviously I'm wearing our sweatshirt that has pearls all over it. I have a skirt on too. They have totally made a comeback. So shorts and a skirt with little pearls embellished on it because we feel like we want pieces that you can wear to the pickup line, but you could also, you feel pretty wearing them too. So we have those pieces and then we have pieces for events. We have sweet cocktail hour dresses. And we just felt like we wanted a space for women to shop and feel beautiful. And we will never have men modeling our clothing. Lindsay and I recently, just a few months ago, also launched Kenzie, which is a combination of Kendall and Lindsay. And you can find Kenzie on prettylittlepatriot.com too. And that is our intimate line. So we have bras and panties there because right now there's not an option of undergarments for women that isn't woke. And can you imagine seeing seeing these men modeling our women's undergarments? Like absolutely not. No, thank you. So yeah, prettylittlepatriot.com.
Well, I'm so excited to support womanhood. And I'm so excited that you're doing this, Kendall. And I really pray that it will lead the charge, I think, for a
Thank
new
you.
movement that's going to, I think there's a hunger for it, just like there's a hunger for womanhood right now. I think
Yeah.
for authentic womanhood, I think there's a hunger for fashion, for family, for a country. And I just pray that you'll continue to lead the charge and be a voice of courage for all women. And I just want to also say, because I talk about friendship here, I really value the way your friendship with Lindsay from my distance I'm seeing has almost led you to your purpose and your call. I think that's a powerful testimony of authentic friendship.
She's definitely my best friend. And I think it's incredible how God brings us different friendships in different times of your life. I think if Lindsay and I had met at a different time, we just have such different stories that it wouldn't have been as beautiful as it is now. And she truly is, she's my best friend and definitely one of my
See
soulmates. So
why.
I'm really thankful for that.
I can see why she has a fierce and tender heart, and I can see
Yeah.
that same thing. And the genuineness, I think, is just what I think women probably gravitate towards you. So thank you. Everything that you've spoken here, Kendall, what we teach in the women's school essentially on frameworks and formulas. That's what we do. And so I wanted to just highlight that the fact that it's like this can be lived out because
Yeah.
you're living that embodiment of what we teach because women don't have that. So get to give women hope, to give women saying, okay, I don't have the courage, I don't have a voice, I don't even know where to begin with my family. I'll say it's possible. You have to show up every
Hmm.
single to before God in both prayer and
Yeah.
study. And I think that all things is possible for God. So thank you, Kendall, so much. I'll put all the information, the details of where you can find her.
Thank you.
And I hope that you continue to follow her and like her stuff and not have her even shadow ban all these crazy things. So, because I think that we are going to probably hear from you more. And I hope that you will someday be that leader, I think, of a new movement of women to reclaim womanhood. So thank you,
Thank
Kendall.
you so much.
If you like this practical life training in the Women's School, click subscribe so you can get access to more of our practical life training. Also, comment below and let us know what you think so we can hear from you. Don't forget to like this video and share it because our vision here in the Women's School is to give you practical life training to help you become who you were created to be for such a time as this.